figured out how to write the thesis by now. All right. So yeah, good job on that one. Okay. So let's look at this now. Um, Move the pens now to where you think, where you might have an opportunity um, on the rubric to score points that are from outside evidence. So outside evidence, where do you think on that rubric you have an opportunity? Yeah, clearly the outside evidence point there. A lot of you are going there. Um, Also, of course, you've got contextualization. This is an area where we we like to teach you to begin your response by establishing good background information, by establishing the historical context, introducing the topic with the appropriate when, where, a little bit of the context to lead us into whatever the focus is, the framework of your response. So yeah, your contextualization is another area there, along with that evidence beyond the document. Of course, that is where you need to go beyond what's in front of you in those documents and discuss something that's relevant that would help you earn that point. Point of view would also be the third one, because you are kind of going beyond the document and considering why that document was written by that author at that time. So yeah, that's pretty much how these rubrics come together. All right. So let me ask you this: where should you spend your time in terms of adding outside knowledge? In terms of what we just looked at, where do you think you should spend your time? Meaning, which points are you most likely to earn? Like we typically, as we grade these throughout the year, as a lot of our teachers go on to the actual national readings and AP readings and grade, we often see that students actually have a good possibility of earning these points. So go ahead and rank those. Do you think it's evidence beyond the documents is number one, most likely to earn that point? Do you think for you it's more contextualization? So go ahead and be dragging one, two, three, kind of rank them with one being, which one of those points do you think is the most likely? Which one of those areas you think is most likely to be earned? All right, interesting. Yeah, some are dragging those ones around to different places. Some have, yeah, pretty well represented. See several over here on the contextualization, but also some of you are saying evidence beyond the documents. So in terms of just what we typically see, by far, contextualization is actually the most awarded point. Um, and then the second place would be evidence beyond the documents. And then the third, the one that's kind of the most difficult for students that typically we don't see this point awarded quite as often, is the analysis of the actual source, because you have to do that, of course, for three of the documents to earn that point. Okay. But yeah, students typically when they write their AP essay responses, a lot of them have a pretty good idea of how to begin that response with establishing contextualization. So that's your number one there. That's probably the easiest point as we, kind of get beyond the direct evidence of the documents and the thesis. Okay. So in terms of contextualization, again, hopefully you've got a pretty good handle on it by now in the year. But in case you're still kind of struggling with it, again, it's ideally the first several sentences when you start in that, what typically you learn in English is your introductory paragraph. When you begin this response, it's so appropriate to kind of set the stage, with the appropriate background information, with the appropriate historical context. So here's what I want you to do. Kind of read this with me. Look at what the prompt is going to be. And don't worry, you don't have to write an essay tonight, but go ahead and look at that prompt about analyzing the economic effects of the global flow of silver from the mid 16th, 18th to the early 18th centuries. All right. So if you are going to, start writing this response, and you're going to begin with context like we encourage you to do, um, go ahead and move your pen to what you think is the best answer to this question about what's happening in the 1500s. Again, we want to, if we're going to set up this question, establish the context, the background information, we want to discuss maybe the causation, what's been happening, what's leading us to this point that our thesis and our response ultimately is going to center on. So go ahead and move your pen. What do you think is the better answer to, in terms of A or B here, to address? What do you think the good contextual information would be here? Yeah, so this one, yeah, I see, it looks like um, we have several that are going with the first response, going with A. And this is where it gets a little tricky in terms of what the reader is looking for, because they're both true. Both statements are true. But the better answer, you hear that a lot in AP, your better answer is actually B. Um, so consider this: we're addressing the people who are actually putting the Spanish, that being the people that are putting the silver in the global flow, along with the Portuguese. And so that's going to really help us kind of establish those early steps to help us get us through what's going to happen next in terms of the flow of the silver from, obviously not just from the Americas, but to the Far East as well, and clearly to Europe in the center there. So yeah, B is going to be your better answer on this one. Again, you're both are true, but the reader is really looking for something that sets up a good answer to this question by kind of introducing the cast that we're talking about, and some specific facts too. So this is more in that kind of causation realm that you want to stick with when you cover context. All right, let's move on then. So here's another example. So notice the prompt is different. Analyze the African reactions in responses to the European scramble for Africa. So here we go to the 19th century. So what was happening in the 1800s that caused the scramble for Africa? In other words, why were the Europeans in Africa? So that again is what you want to address when you first start writing your response, if this was your essay question. Okay. And so how do you get a good response going? Which one of those, A, B, or C, do you think would best set up a good contextualization set of sentences there? So take a second, A, B, or C. Let's see what you think. All right, let's take a look here. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of people around B. Excellent. Excellent. Good job. And first of all, look at A, immediately you think, well, that's true, but there's just not much substance in that. Okay, that's probably in eighth or ninth grade world history you could have answered this. So AP, we need a little more substance than that. And what about C? I mean, does it really look that bad? Does it look, well? It's more of an effect. So again, contextualization, you're thinking causes, you're thinking causation, you're thinking how we're going to get the ball rolling towards the ultimate, response that we're going to, focus the framework of our essay. So C is more about something you may discuss later in your response. So B is going to be your best one there. B is very good at establishing something that is specific and a cause for imperialism. Okay, so yeah, good job, all of you that selected B there. Excellent. All right. So here's yet another one to practice with to make sure we really understand contextualization tonight. Um, Notice the prompt now. Evaluate the extent to which Christianity changed societies in Latin America in the period 1500 to 1800. So once again, we're thinking about before Christianity. We're also thinking about society before Christianity. All right. So if these are your practice sentences, think of this as kind of some, kind of like a template to follow. Um, Go ahead and type in what do you think would be some good words to fill in those blanks there. In 1450, before the arrival of the Spanish, Native American societies like blank. Hopefully, you can remember some that you discussed. Practiced what? What were some of their religious examples, beliefs, or maybe religious rites or activities? What did they do? So let's see what you can come up with there. Yeah, I'm seeing, yeah, Aztecs, good. Of course, as we typically, the two that we're probably going to get the most attention given in terms of the direct contact with Europeans, meaning, the leading empires there in the 15th century when we have that contact, of course, is going to be the Aztec and the Inca. And then when you start thinking about, what they're going to practice, you're probably thinking about polytheism. That's a great word to use. That's using the word like that is it going to get the attention of the reader instead of saying many different gods or goddesses. Say polytheism, and that's a good specific word that we like to use in history. You also may want to discuss the human sacrifices. You remember the Aztec believed that human sacrifices, that blood actually brought forth the growth of maize that appeased the gods and led to the crops that supported the civilization. So discussing something like that, you may mention that the Inca believed that their emperor, such as Atahualpa, for instance, was like a living god. So yeah, any discussions like that, I think, where you can use some specific examples is definitely going to help you earn that context point. All right. Now, and just a reminder, of course, we know that learning how to do context, learning how to establish that good background information to kind of, what causes, what led us here, that's also going to be required on the LEQ. So that's a similarity between both the DBQ and the LEQ is that opening paragraph. You're going to have first few sentences to establish the context that's going to lead into your thesis. Okay. So that's going to be consistent on both, even though one clearly you're dealing with documents and the other, whatever is in that kind of intellectual wheelhouse, so to speak. Okay. All right. So why do you think so many students are missing the evidence beyond the document point? Again, when you're doing the DBQ and you're going to be pulling evidence from the actual documents, why do so many students miss this specific point? Probably number one is they're focusing on the documents and they get kind of behind, or they're starting to rush, and they are trying to pull so much from the documents that they forget to discuss just briefly something that would actually be relevant to their response, something outside of the documents. Okay. So, and two, this is something you kind of have to pull out of your brain, that you may be reminded of something in the documents, but you got to be careful and discuss something that's different. Okay. All right. So let's look at that now. So again, in focusing now, we're thinking about evidence beyond the documents, how to get that particular point. We're looking back at that prompt about the flow of silver from the mid 16th to early 18th century. So this would be an example of one of the documents you would have. Okay, so again, it prompts you, but you don't want to discuss what's already in a document. You're not going to earn the point then, clearly. So consider what the argument here that we're looking at. Okay, this economic effect of the global flow of silver is the downturn in the economy of many states. That's what we're arguing. So here's your question. What is another piece of specific evidence beyond this particular document in front of you that would make this argument stronger? So let's see how you do on this one. Take a second, think about it. What would be another piece of evidence beyond this actual document that you could discuss here? Give you a second to do that. Of course, this is like multiple choice questions, so can help you out there with that. All right, seeing a lot of people go with B. And of course, this would be if we were all in class together, I would ask, why are you going with B? But you're right. I'd love to hear, what you're thinking, but yeah, I can clearly tell that you're on the right track. So B is specific. Clearly, it's addressing the Ottomans, it's addressing the Mughal empires. So this is going beyond what we saw in the document. Uh, Chances are we're not seeing this information in some of the other documents in front of us. So yeah, this is a great way to earn that point is to mention something specific. So yeah, B is your best answer there. Um, A again, there's just not much there in A. It's too vague. And C, well, yes, but it's really, if you think about it, it's what we already gained from the document. So the reader is not going to give you credit, outside evidence credit for that. It may help you get credit for the documents, but not the outside evidence that we're looking at. Okay. So yeah, great job, everybody. All right. So now we're going back to that African reactions to the Scramble for Africa prompt. So this would be one of the documents in front of you. Okay, notice Italian troops, Ethiopia, 1896. All right, some of the key words there to jump off the page. And what you're arguing there is that Africans often responded to this scramble for Africa by fighting back against the Europeans. All right. So to earn the evidence beyond the document, evidence beyond what you see in front of you, what's something else? What is something else that you could mention? So take a second and respond to that particular question. Think about what else could make your argument stronger. Let's see how you do on this one. All right. Start to see more people come in with C, and that is good. That is the correct answer. Yeah. C is actually going to be your best answer there. It's directly connected to what the prompt is. Again, so, you know, remember AP stands for advanced placement, but also stands for answer the prompt. Don't forget to answer the prompt. And so your response here is in C anyway, is linked to the prompt. So this is clearly going to be your best of the three. B kind of gets a little bit too far off the reservation of going well into the 20th century. So it's not really quite relevant to the time period we're looking at. So again, C is going to be your best answer. All right. Let's look at another one. So again, the extent to which Christianity changed societies in Latin America. And here would be an example of a document that you would have in front of you. All right. So as you kind of look at that, here's the argument. The Native Americans adapted their society to include Jesuit teachings in their daily lives of festivals and tournaments. Okay. So that ultimately is what you're arguing in your response. So here, write another piece of specific evidence beyond this document. Let's see what you can come up with. And this one is going to be a little bit harder. We don't give you quite as much. So here's kind of a couple of ideas, a couple of questions to maybe help you remember some things. Is there another method the Spanish used to force Christianity on the natives? Is there something you know about the Jesuits that again would kind of help complete this essay? Evidence that would probably be outside of the documents in front of you. So give that your best shot. It'll be a little tougher, but go ahead and see what you do with it. Yeah, I'm starting to see Ignatius Loyola. Yeah, the Jesuits there, giving a little background information. Um, yeah, mixture of cultures. All right. Moving into the Columbian Exchange. All right. So yeah, clearly, yeah, Jesuits, French missionaries. Okay, and that I think that would be Yeah, I think you're on the right track with that. Because again, if you can go back and tell the reader, remind the reader first and foremost that these Jesuits, one of their number one roles within the Catholic Church was to convert, was to be the missionaries, especially in the New World. And so a discussion of that, mentioning kind of one of their, their purpose, if you will, I think that would be setting up a good opportunity to earn points with outside evidence. You might also discuss the haciendas or the encomienda system, of course, kind of this contract where they would convert and the Native Americans, and then in return, the Native Americans would give them this work for them, which you've clearly read about that kind of forced labor system, but it was a way to, again, convert the natives. So good job on that. Let's move right along then. All right. So the other part we want to look at, so we've covered contextualization. We've covered now how to maybe go about getting the evidence beyond the document. All right. Another point, of course, and that's tough for students sometimes, is this analysis point. And again, it's probably tough because again, we have to analyze three of the documents. So clearly, to get the evidence, we want to at least discuss and analyze six of them. But to the deeper analysis of the document, again, considering things like the purpose, the audience, what's the historical situation, what's the point of view of the author. A lot of students that we see, they do this once and maybe even twice, but for whatever reason, for time or they forget, they oftentimes don't do it a third time. And so that's why that they work so hard and then they don't get the point. It's kind of an all or nothing. You got to try this for at least three of the documents. All right. So let's think about this one now. How do you earn this point again for sourcing? Um, the uh, the best advice I can give you, first of all, is that if you are crunched with time, this is maybe the last thing you want to try to earn. You can still do really well on this if you, again, you have that good contextual background, you have a solid thesis, you provide the evidence from the documents, you throw in that outside evidence. Again, you can still do really good on this. So if you are pretty fast in your reading, your writing, you're analyzing, and you're able to go for this, or if you're going for that 4 or 5, then clearly take some time for this. But really, there's not one set way I would recommend. It kind of depends on the documents. Some it's easy to tell the point of view. Sometimes the position of the individual writing, like what that if that person is a peasant or that person is a noble, or that person is political background, that would help you. So just the document itself, looking at the source will help you there. Okay. So let's look real quick because I know we've only got a set amount of time tonight. So let's look at the LEQ for a second and just kind of make sure you fully understand the parameters there. So clearly, we're thinking that you're going to spend a little more time on the DBQ. LEQ, you try to reserve about 40 minutes for. 3 solid paragraphs is going to help you. Is probably going to position you to earn several points. So that should make you feel better. Again, solid paragraphs, not just 3 quick in and out. And that's going to be kind of the hardest thing for this one is you're going to be exhausted and you're probably going to spend a lot of your brain power on that DBQ because you feel more confident in it. But what we hope in this LEQ is you get the response or you get the prompt and you start framing a response, something that you can remember. So try to, you may have to take a second to kind of brainstorm in your mind, but 3 solid paragraphs here will help you get a lot of points. And what they're looking for is to set up one of these 3 argumentative frameworks. So typically we're either going to be comparing something, or we're going to be discussing causation, kind of the cause and effect, or we're also going to be looking at continuity and change over time. So kind of figure out what the question, the prompt, you may have to kind of read it a few times and look for some keywords in the prompt. We'll talk about that. And that gives you kind of the direction. So if you start off with the right direction, knowing which framework to use, it's really going to help you, and you're going to be more likely to earn some of these points, right? And then other than that, it's just you're throwing as much specific evidence. It needs to be relevant, needs to be specific, but throwing as much evidence as you can to help you earn those points. All right. So in terms of similarities, we've already established both of them are going to begin with context and thesis. Okay. So again, that should make you feel pretty good. You're going to start both essays in a very similar fashion. Notice that both of them are going to require specific evidence, to defend whatever argument is that you're crafting. All right. Let's look at how they're different, though. Clearly, the DBQ is giving you the documents to analyze. The LEQ, it's again, you got to pull it out of that intellectual wheelhouse. Notice this too. It says while the DBQ gives an analysis point for sourcing. Okay. So the LAQ has this much easier analysis for using a historical reasoning skill. So that's again, as long as you construct this essay in a way that it's going to be obvious that you're telling the reader, hey, I know this is causation, or hey, I know that this is a CCOT. As long as the reader can see what you're setting up, that's how you're going to earn the analysis point. It's easier to do here for the LAQ. All right. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so let's practice a little bit with an LEQ. Again, no documents in front of us. We'll try to, pull as best we can from memory. So here's the prompt: period 1450 to 1750. All right. Oceanic voyages resulted in the Columbian Exchange, which transformed the Eastern and Western hemispheres. Okay. So that kind of introduces the question. Now let's get into kind of the meat of the question. And what is the question turning on? What is it ultimately asking you to do? Develop an argument that evaluates how the Columbian Exchange affected peoples in the Americas in this time period. Okay. So what we're doing right here is you're going to look at the prompt, and we want to know which historical thinking skill is being asked. So again, to earn that analysis point here for the LEQ, the historical thinking skill that you're gonna, kind of build your whole long essay question to answer. What are you doing? Are you comparing? Is it causation? Or is it continuity and change? What do you think here? So take a second, move your pen. Let's see what you come up with. Great job. And causation is your best answer because it's probably the easiest. And again, the key word here that you're looking at of evaluate how the Columbian Exchange affected peoples in the Americas. So yeah, the word affected there, again, if you look at the prompt closely, you'll be able to tell what's the thinking skill, the historical thinking skill. Now, those of you that put CCOT, let me just point this out. You might be able to draft a response to this particular question, discussing the continuities and the changes. All right. So it's not to say that it's impossible to do, it just might be harder for you to do than the causation here. Okay. So yeah, as I just mentioned, the word affected there should really kind of jump off the page. All right. So now look at the prompt again, and we want you for a second to kind of brainstorm some of the facts, because again, as you read this question, you're thinking about, of course, what is it asking me to do? It wants me, of course, to draft a response using the causation approach here. Now, the next thing that you're going to be doing when you draft this essay is you're going to be thinking, okay, what do I know? What are the specific factual information? How am I going to get the evidence here? What is some evidence that maybe you could come up with? So this is in your mind, or maybe if you kind of brainstorm on a piece of scratch paper, whatever, this is where you're going to start putting things down that, and you hope that they are relevant and that they are specific enough. And so let's see what some of you guys are coming up with. Yeah, mentioning diseases. See some migration here. Okay. Triangle trait, a lot of good, very syncretism, great. Seeing a lot of really specific terminology there that you go and discuss. Yeah, smallpox and measles to discuss, some of the worst of the diseases that were spread. So yeah, seeing some really good responses there. Excellent. Obviously, we're going to get to slavery. That's going to be a major issue here. Great job. Okay. Bear with me just 1 second. My presentation seems to be acting up a little bit. Okay, there we go. Well, now it really wants to go forward. Okay. So yeah, you see this kind of this word cloud up here or bubble. Yeah, decline of population, coerced labor, some of the animals traded like horses, exposing horses, to the new world. So yeah, it's obviously the spread of Christianity, spread of smallpox. Yeah, that's all some key terminology there that you could mention. All right. So let's look at the responses now to this particular question. Yeah, good job. B is going to be your best answer here. During the time 1450 to 1750, the Columbian Exchange caused population in the Americas to decline dramatically due to European diseases. All right. Clearly, A, there's just not enough there. I mean, you guys could answer that when you were in elementary school. And then of course, C, we don't really want to, not that's again a lot of effects on the people. There's just once again not as much as we see in B. B is really going to kind of remind us that from the Columbian Exchange, from this contact, we're going to get not just diseases, but also this decline in population. So yeah, it's just, and again, I think most of you could probably write that down on an essay response. I think you guys can do that. And I hope what you're seeing from this, I hope that you see these points are a lot easier than what you might otherwise think. Okay. They don't expect you to be a PhD professor writing his latest book or article. You can earn a point for that. And I think a lot of you could write that sentence. Okay. All right. Let's now look a little bit more at this LEQ. So here we want you to look at the sentences. This, of course, as you arrange sentences into body paragraph, what do you think would be the best order to arrange these sentences? A lot of these things you learn in English language. Best way to write a paragraph and kind of your general idea at the beginning, getting a little more specific with details after that. So go ahead and drag your numbers. And if you would kind of indicate how you would set this up. Again, we've given you the sentences on this one. So, but we want to see that you can kind of understand how these sentences should be presented. Again, this is kind of a word to the wise. You want to make the life of the reader much easier. So the better you write, the better you begin these paragraphs with those general ideas, with those good topic sentences, and then support those sentences with specific, factual information. The better they're going to treat your essay. They're going to give you better grades if you make their life easier. So go ahead and start putting the numbers there to show kind of the order. Again, the order here that we would put these sentences together. All right.
Well, 이거
Okay.
agriculture,
그런데 이미 틀었나?
Arduino,
Seeing a lot of
Arduino
ones
robot
here.
for,
Seeing a lot of
for
ones
STEM,
here.
or I mean, for
Seeing a lot of ones in the center there. And yeah, that's good. Yeah, because one thing we know that it sets up the time period and immediately addresses what the subject matter is of the Columbian Exchange. And again, it tells us exactly what we're going to go on to discuss in more specifics after that. So yeah, you guys are doing a great job here with your ones there in the center. I see a lot of twos coming up there. So yeah, that's excellent. Okay, good job on that. All right, let's move right along then. So this is giving you kind of a good example of maybe hopefully what you came up with in terms of if you would have put this in the correct order, the correct sequence, what ultimately it would look like. Now, what we're asking you to do on this particular slide, put a pin on all of the causation words. So again, don't forget that's ultimately what we're doing in this essay is we're discussing or we're establishing the causation. That's the historical thinking skill. That's how we're going to get that analysis point. So put a pin on the words that you see where this, whoever wrote this did a good job of reminding the reader, hey, this is a causation essay because I'm using these key words. So what are some of the words that kind of jump off the page that you think continue to remind the reader that deserves this analysis point? Okay. All right, due to, caused, yeah, good job. Excellent. Let me go to the next one here. And sorry, my presentation is taking a little while. Okay, so yeah, great job on that. Let's look at this. So support a second argument. So come up with more evidence. In this one, we want you to move the pen to a second effect of the Columbian Exchange. All right, so what do you think would be a good second effect? So assuming we've already discussed disease, smallpox, decline in population, what would be a good second argument? You got your good contextual opening paragraph with the thesis. You've discussed the disease factor. Now we get to that good solid third paragraph to maximize our points. What's another way to pick up evidence here? Okay, seeing some diverse answers here. All right. Again, we're seeing several different responses because we're seeing answers that all sound good because we know they're factually correct. But C is the one that is going to best answer the prompt. Okay, it's the one that's discussing the peoples in the Americas. So A is more about global. All right, it kind of goes beyond the prompt. All right. B, same thing. Well, it's kind of going more to Europe, the European effects. So C is going to be the best one because it's most relevant to the prompt. All right. So again, kind of once we see what that prompt is, make sure that prompt creates kind of a mental framework for you and make sure your response fits the prompt. Again, answers the prompt. All right. Again, we don't really dedicate a lot of time in this particular presentation to writing the thesis, but great idea here is if you kind of know what you're going to argue in your two supporting paragraphs, go ahead and combine those arguments into that single thesis. Okay, so how's it affected the people? By causing population decline from diseases and increasing labor through the use of beast of burden. Notice how there's specific information in there. It's not too vague. At the same time, we can write this without, taking up an entire page. This is going to be a thesis that has two solid points in it and would earn the point. Okay, let's move on now. Again, contextualization is how we want to introduce and begin this response, just like we already looked at with the DBQ. So let's think about how we would contextualize this. Why did the Columbian Exchange happen? Why were the Spanish traveling to the Americas? So which one of these do you think is the best contextualization for this particular prompt? Take a second, drag your pen and answer this one. Again, A, something once again we pick up it when we're young. It's not going to get us a point on the AP exam though. I mean, I agree, and I still use that one, but that's really not complex enough. B is, again, it's more about an effect. Okay, so remember, contextualization, we want to discuss causes. All right, so B is more what you would find later in the response. C definitely is your best answer here. All right. It not only tells us that why the Spanish are there, it tells us why in terms of the competition for trade routes in the Indian Ocean. So, and of course, Columbus's role as well. So that clearly is going to be your best response there. Okay. All right. So again, if we put all of it together, this would be a good response to this particular LEQ question. You look at the contextual sentences we've already analyzed, the thesis, and then a good solid supporting paragraph. And of course, you'd have another one as well, further talking about the Columbian Exchange. Okay. All right. So now let's look at a different topic. We're going to look at this time period, 1750 to 1900. And now the subject matter is going to be Enlightenment philosophers, okay, and how they're applying new ways of understanding to the natural world and human relationships, okay? So the prompt is telling us to develop an argument that examines the extent to which the Enlightenment transformed societies over time. All right. So first thing we want to do, and looking at this prompt and really making sure we have our mind wrapped around and understanding what it is that I need to do in my response. Go ahead and figure out, what is the historical thinking skill? Look for the key words that jump out of the prompt. What is the prompt ultimately asking us to do? How are we going to position ourselves to earn this analysis for LEQ by setting up the appropriate historical thinking skill? So go ahead and drag your pen now. Do you think it's a comparison question? Do you think this is causation? Or is this a CCOT? What do you think? And I'm thinking a lot about the word, just to kind of give you a hint, transformed. The word transformed. Okay. Excellent job. Continuity and change. You guys are great. Y'all are in a great position. It looks like y'all have been doing a lot of writing this year. So kudos to your teachers. Yeah, great job. You recognize that is, especially, the transformation, also the extent, kind of, because we're measuring there could be some things that remain the same, some continuities, but we're also going to see the changes and kind of the significance of those changes, the severity of those changes, whatever. So yeah, that's great. Excellent job on that. Okay. So something else that you want to make sure you pick up from this prompt. Another key word there. So we know that we want to, this is a CCOT. What about societies? Because that is going to help us kind of focus on the right topics to discuss, the right evidence to pull in. So when we see the word societies or society, and a lot of you use all kind of different versions, Spice or ESPN or whatever to help you kind of categorize and organize. So when we see the word society, look at the 5 choices there. Which 2 really address society? Political rights and jobs, racial and ethnic groups, kinds of government, or gender roles. So go ahead and tell me which 2 of those 5 would really address society. All right. I think most of you have got the right idea here. Yeah. So when we discuss society or social, we're thinking of different classes of people and how people are organized. So definitely racial or ethnic groups would work. Definitely gender roles. Okay. So yeah, that's typically what, if I see that question come up, or if I'm reading something and I see society come up, I'm immediately thinking of race or ethnic, gender, or sometimes like class. Okay. Like socioeconomic class. Okay. So as we continue to consider this same prompt, now we're going to kind of be brainstorming once again. What's some of the evidence? What are some things that I could pull again from my mind to help me answer this question? And again, we can't just start throwing everything we know. We got to think of it within society. So within, for instance, how does it affect women? How does it affect racial groups? So I'll give you a second to come up with some responses there, some things that you may discuss, may remember to discuss. Yeah, not given the same rise. We know that the feminist movement is going to come on definitely by mid 19th century. Of course, we're mentioning some that would care. There you go. Mention some specific people. There you go. Of course, we're eventually, we're going to get emancipation also. A lot of the 19th century as well. They're awesome. Mary Wollstonecraft, that's a great specific factual piece of evidence to insert there. Great job. Social Darwinism, excellent. All right. Well done. You guys appear to be spot on in your responses. Great job. So again, now hopefully you're seeing that this is, more than you probably are giving yourself credit for. Okay. So just give your mind a second to brainstorm. You'll be surprised how much you're going to be able to pull out of there. Yeah, so here's a good list that maybe some of you were trying to get around to: natural rights, of course, abolitionism, social contract, Harriet Tubman. All of these would probably fall into some of that specific factual information to help you answer this question. Okay. All right, let's consider this. So remember a little while ago when we numbered them, how would you organize the sentences if this was a supporting paragraph in this particular essay? How would you organize? How would you number? So like put the one, what would be your big main idea, your topic sentence that would go first? And then so on and so forth, and see how, if you got the organization down. So go ahead and drag your number. Okay, just practice with that a second. All right, just a few more minutes tonight, almost done. Waiting on my Pear Deck to respond. Here we go. I think we're about to. I think my internet's already on Easter break. There we go, maybe. All right, I've clicked the arrow. Let's hope for the best. All right. Yeah, of course, now it's going crazy. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, so thanks for being patient with me. So again, this is a good way to organize, to set up this particular paragraph. Over time, the Enlightenment Transformed Society extended the right to vote to women. Okay, so notice how it starts with a general idea, a main idea, and then it's going to get more specific, kind of like an upside down pyramid. And it's going to drop all kinds of specific, factual information and evidence in there. That's going to help us get points. Okay. So yeah, hopefully the way that you ordered moments ago looks very much like this paragraph. Again, almost done. Just a few more things here. Hopefully everybody again has a pretty good idea by this point how to organize, how to structure, how to pull some good information in. Trying to get us to a few more slides, and like I said, we'll cut it off. I may have to cut it off before that if my presentation doesn't want to cooperate. Again, as we get ready to close here in a second, don't forget in the chat room, if you've had any questions come up and you want to ask them, you certainly can. Hopefully you guys have a pretty good grasp of the LEQ and the DBQ by now and what else is expected. And I don't know if I'm going to get much more out of my Pear Deck tonight. We seem to be stuck. I'm going to try to get us at least to the very end where we provide an opportunity for you to give us some feedback. So as soon as it scrolls forward, I will put that up. Again, I've appreciated your presence tonight, your attendance. Thank you so much for being with us. I know it's a lot to ask, and especially, on what kind of turned into a Friday. There it is. What's kind of turned into a Friday night for a lot of you, since some of you have school off tomorrow. So I hope you have a good long Easter weekend. Need some candy for me. And if you would, here at the end, go ahead and click on that Google form and give us some feedback. And best of luck, you guys. Just be confident. You're going to be amazed at how much you actually remember when you sit down to take this test. So just give it your all, and best of luck to you here as you head into the last month of preparation. And I promise the future you will be glad that you took the test seriously when you're able to skip some classes in college. So best of luck to you. Finish that feedback, give us that feedback, and then you're welcome to go ahead and start exiting our Zoom page. So good luck, guys. Thanks for joining us.